WIBW Topeka FM News 104.9.
We're back on election coverage on 580 WIBW and FM News 104.9. Nick Gosnell with you, and our Sam Wood out in the field tonight. So good evening, Sam. How are you?
Doing great, Nick. How about yourself?
So far, so good. So what do you know thus far? I know you were headed out to the Republican Watch Party. Have you had an opportunity to get there yet?
Indeed, we are. We're here at Lynn Jenkins' watch party at the Capitol Plaza Hotel in downtown Topeka. I am joined currently by Zach Haney. He's a candidate in Kansas's 19th Senate District. He's challenging Anthony Hensley. We're going to go and put him on the phone right now.
Sounds great. Zach, good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to speak with you.
All right, so let's talk about this Kansas Senate race. What have you learned in your time running for this office, and what's your biggest takeaway from this particular race?
Well, you definitely learn a lot whenever you decide to run for political position, and I certainly saw that finances is a huge part of that. My opponent spent over $100,000 on his campaign. We were about 1/10 of that, but we definitely had more feet on the ground. So I realized just the whole structure of it. As a small business owner, I kind of was able to look at the whole campaign process almost as just a small business. So from, the voters really are buying into you or they're not going to buy into you. So you kind of treat it like that. And for me, it was really, we had to have more people on the ground knocking on doors, and that's really how we ran our entire campaign. I mean, we just tried to speak to as many people, get in front of as many people as possible to share the message with them.
And it's interesting when you have someone that you're running against with as much political experience as what your opponent had, because Anthony Hensley has been a leader in the Kansas legislature for years and years, and also in the Senate. What was it that made your message different than maybe what his was?
Well, and Senator Hensley, he has been, a part of the legislature for over 40 years. I think just having someone new. I mean, for a lot of the people that I spoke to, going to their doors, they've said, we voted for the same guy the last 40 years, and it's time to do something different. So really across the board, it just felt like this whole message of bringing, a new representative in to represent the people of the district. So I think that's what really set our campaigns apart. I admire people for, especially my opponent. He ran at a very young age, but there comes a certain point where it is time to do something different, and that's what my campaign was all about.
Again, our thanks to Zach Haney, a candidate in the Kansas 19th Senate District. Early returns have Anthony Hensley leading in that race, but we did want to give Zach an opportunity to talk to us. Thank you so much for your time.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, so Zach Haney with us from the Republican Watch Party that's taking place at the Capitol Plaza in Topeka. Our Sam Wood is there all evening long. He'll have more for us as the evening goes along. On the Democratic side, our Keith Montgomery is at the Democrat Watch Party here in Topeka as well. Good evening, Keith.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate you getting me on here for a couple of minutes. I can just tell you that I have covered this event probably the past 3 election seasons. And one of the things that I can tell you is there's an awful lot of exuberance in this room, and probably more packed than I've ever seen it. There are a few of the candidates here, obviously with the early returns. Many of them are choosing not to speak at this time, although they have granted a couple of television interviews. And I can tell you that people are, every time there is an announcement of some of the national races and another one gets closed or something like that, there's an awful lot of applauding and exuberance here in the room. But there's an excellent turnout here, and if there's any things that I could ask, if there's anything that you guys would like to ask me about what's going on down here, I can certainly do that.
Sure. Well, the question is, the national race has turned out, at least to this point, to be, we've got, 9 states too close to call at this point, and is that, has that affected the mood in the room at all? Is it more positive, more negative, based upon some of these battleground states being really close?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Nick. I've been in this room when it was deathly quiet. And no, there is an awful lot of excitement. Every time there is a polling that favors the Democrats in either a Senate or a congressional race or certainly with the presidential race, there's a loud uproar in this room. There's a couple of hospitality suites that they have set up upstairs. There is a bar here, and there's a lot of young people here. There's a lot of older people here. There's an awful lot of excitement in the room, and every time that a new race is called for one reason or another, or some kind of determination with some results, there's a lot of hand clapping and a lot of hollering going on.
Okay, one more question about those young people, because we're talking about the same folks that voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. They are now sort of fully integrated into the political process, you would think, as young adults. Are you seeing sort of the younger adult 30 or around 30 crowd, maybe those that might have small kids at home with a babysitter, that kind of a thing? Is that what you're seeing in the room there as well?
Yeah, it is, as a matter of fact. And you mentioned young children. There are some children who have been brought along. I can't say that they're going to last much long because this is moving pretty slow at this rate. But, yes, there is a tremendous cross-section of people. I would say the majority of the people in the room are a little older than, say, 45 or so. But there is a large cross-section of younger adults who are here and a few children who are cheering on their candidates and probably here to support some relatives.
Do you think that some of the exuberance in the room that you're seeing, it seems like I can hear a lot of people back there. I can hear a lot of, glasses being put together and what have you. Do you think it has to do with the finality of it and with this political season the way it has been and the vitriol within the political season, that at the end of the day, win or lose, at least it's going to be over and people are just sort of breathing a sigh of relief? Do you feel that at all?
Well, if I could classify that, Michael, I'd say that in my feeling that's probably about a third of the feeling. There is also a third of the feeling of people who are here to support local candidates. Mm-hmm. But by far the majority of what I take away from this situation is that there are an awful lot of people who have a great respect for the political the process itself, and they're just here to support the whole political process. How the vacuum is going to run out of the room when everything is over tonight, I can't really say. All I can tell you now is that there's a lot of smiles in the room, and people seem to be pretty darn excited about what's going on.
Thank you so much. Keith Montgomery with us from the Democrat Watch Party. When you have the opportunity to get somebody to talk to us about what's going on there as well, be sure to let us know, and we'll pass that along as it comes, okay?
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thanks. And Keith Montgomery with us again here on WIBW News' coverage of election 2016. We're at about 8:14, and we've got now enough results in from the Kansas Secretary of State's office that we should probably at least begin to pass some of those results along to you, with 61 precincts reporting out of over 3,500 in the state of Kansas. So far, Donald Trump leading in the state of Kansas with 51% of the vote to 43% for Hillary Rodham Clinton, Gary Johnson 4%, and 2% for Jill Stein in the presidential race. United States Senate race, so far fairly good for incumbent Jerry Moran, as he has 58% of the vote thus far. Patrick Wiesner with 38% and 5% for Robert D. Gerard. In the 1st District United States House of Representatives race in western Kansas, Roger Marshall, who defeated incumbent Tim Huelskamp in the August primary, looks to be doing fairly well against independent Allen LaPolice and Libertarian candidate Kerry Burt. He has 61% of the vote thus far. LaPolice with 30%, Burt with 9%. In the 2nd District United States House of Representatives race, it is really close. Lynn Jenkins with just over just less than 1,000 vote lead right now, based on the 18 precincts reporting of nearly 1,000 in that district, as she has just over 20,000 votes. Brittany Potter with just about 19,500. Jenkins up 47-46 in that 2nd District House race for the House of Representatives. 7% for Libertarian James Houston Bales in that race as well. We do not have any results yet from what could be the closest district across the state of Kansas, which is the 3rd United States House District up in the Kansas City area. No results as yet from that race. In the 4th District House of Representatives race, Mike Pompeo doing quite quite well. The incumbent from Wichita with 57% of the vote compared to 36% for Daniel B. Giroux. Miranda Allen with 6% and Libertarian Gordon Bakken with 2% in the 4th District House of Representatives race in the United States House of Representatives race here in Kansas. So it's interesting. I'm a little bit surprised, though not, I guess I shouldn't be. It's been a fairly contested race here in the 2nd District, which includes Topeka. Joan Wagnon, the former Kansas Democratic Party chair, are you at all surprised by the early results and how close things are in that 2nd District congressional race?
A little bit. I don't know whether we've gotten all the votes from Southeast Kansas in or not. But, yeah, I would have thought that it would not have been that close. But that's, from the Democrat point of view, very nice.
Okay, and again, Lynn Jenkins is the incumbent for the Republicans in that district, and actually one of the House leadership across the country. In fact, the House, at least in terms of Republican versus Democratic seats, most of the national folks saying that the House is going to stay in Republican hands. Now, what will happen with the Senate across the country? That right now, too close to call. Last information that I saw pop across our screens here was 41 Republican seats and 40 Democratic seats with 2 independents that typically will caucus with the Democrats, but that's the races that were decided as of earlier on this hour, and so we still have a lot more of that to go. And from a national perspective, it'll be interesting to see what kind of governing can be done if there are opposite parties in charge of the different houses, as the House as opposed to the Senate. If things were to hold and the Democrats would get control of the Senate, would that mean then that Congress would have more difficulty working with whoever wins the presidential race?
Well, I think it's important that the president have a working majority in order to get things passed. You have judicial appointments, you have the 100 days pledge, whether it's Trump or Clinton coming out. They're going to need a willing Senate at least. And if this is that razor thin, it could lead to more deadlock that we've had and people hate.
And that's very
I don't know
interesting.
if that's the case much anymore. I think that's the narrative that gets pushed out there, that people hate this deadlock. At the end of the day, it's when government does something that makes people very, very unhappy, because I can't think of something that government has done, at least in the past decade, that people are happy with. They're not happy with the wars. Obamacare is a disaster. The decisions that are being made in Washington simply hurt people. And when you look at it from just a legislative perspective, the idea that if you walk in with your Congress set up, your Senate set up, and your presidency set up, and then you just go and do whatever it is you want to do, even when the margins by which you got elected were so razor thin, you're talking about half of the country that isn't going to like what you want to do. So I think just going in and setting it up, let's go do stuff, I don't think that's going to make people happy.
Well, let's let Joan respond.
You look at what happened with the Zika virus. They couldn't come up with a bill to take care of a huge health problem. And people got furious about that. People in Florida were mad about it, all over the country. It took them longer to come up with that Zika bill than almost anything they've done. So that's one example of when inaction really irritates people.
Well, I think, why didn't Florida do it themselves? I mean, why does the federal government need to step in and take care of Zika? Sure they do.
No, they don't.
Just go buy some DDT and take care of the Zika virus. It's not a problem.
All right. Well, we're going to give those two an opportunity to talk to one another off the air as we join CBS for an update on the election nationwide. And we'll do that in just a moment here at 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. You're listening to WIBW News, WIBWNewsNow.com, and also on 580 AM and 104.9 FM. I'm Nick Gosnell. Let's go ahead and join our national coverage from CBS.
CBS News Special Report, Election 2016.
Polls are now closed in all but 10 states. Latest CBS News projections: Texas goes to Donald Trump, New York to Hillary Clinton, Arkansas, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, North and South Dakota to Donald Trump. Battleground state of North Carolina right now considered a toss-up. CBS's Jim Krasula in Greensboro.
Once again, the key state of North Carolina, with its 15 electoral votes, is considered a toss-up right now, although it's edging toward Hillary Clinton. According to exit polling, Clinton has done well with young voters, women and minorities, while Donald Trump has gotten strong support from men and white voters. The top concern for Tar Heel voters, the economy. More than 40% of registered voters cast ballots during the early voting period.
Other battleground states still toss-ups: Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. One big winner tonight, former presidential candidate Marco Rubio keeps his Senate seat in Florida.
America's going to be okay. We will turn this country around. I have faith. I know God is not done with America yet.
Watching Senate races, CBS's Steve Dorsey.
The first major blow to Democrats seeking control of the Senate is our projection. Republican Congressman Todd Young will beat former Senator Evan Bayh in Indiana. That seat open from Senator Dan Coates retiring. Polls were close in the weeks leading up to the election, yet Bayh came under fire recently for apparently living and working out of state.
CBS News Special Report. I'm Jim Taylor.
WIBWNewsNow.com and 580 WIBW.
A fast start is key for the Wildcats as well as your cattle. It's time to step up your game with Lactapro Advance. Lactapro Advance allows for a quicker and smoother transition to high concentrate diets, which means more profit for you. Are you ready to step up your game? Talk to your nutritionist or veterinarian about how Lactapro Advance can put more money in your pocket. Lactapro Advance from MS Biotech.
Back on WIBWNewsNow.com as we rejoin Sam Wood at the Republican Watch Party here in Topeka. Good evening, Sam.
Good evening, Nick. We are joined now with the woman of the hour, U.S. Congressman Lynn Jenkins. We're going to go ahead and let her have the phone now.
Thank you, and good evening, Lynn. How are you?
Great.
All right. It's been interesting. Early returns from the Secretary of State's office have your race as being a fairly close one, but you've been around this before. How long does it normally take before something is decided across the state of Kansas, or at least in your district?
Oh, my district is so rural. We have 25 counties, and they come in throughout the evening. I think typically we have a response by 10:30 usually.
Okay. It is looking like some of the national folks are talking about the Republicans are going to hold on to the House, and you've been a member of House leadership during your last term here in Kansas. So looking at that from a leadership perspective, are you excited about the opportunity to have another 2 years, presuming that you hold on to your seats, to work with your colleagues as the majority in the House?
Yeah, I believe we are going to maintain control in the House, which is, I think, confirmation that the American people appreciate the work that the People's House has done and will continue to do. We're going to drive our agenda. It's a bottom-up approach to public policy making, listening to our constituents, taking those ideas back to Washington, drafting legislation, going through regular order. And we're going to continue to do that.
So what's the first thing that you would like to see the House of Representatives do coming in a new Congress to get accomplished for not only the American people but the people of Kansas?
Well, I think it's important that we do a couple things. I mean, we need to talk about balancing the budget. That's going to require tax reform. And we've got to take a look at this mess of a health care system that Obamacare has created across the nation. So there are some things in the first 100 days that we need to tackle in very short order.
Again, we've been talking to Representative Lynn Jenkins with us. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your time.
You bet. Have a great evening.
You too. Again,
all righty. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep, we've been talking to Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins here on WIBW News. Nick Gosnell with you. Also on the telephone with us is Ryan Wright with the group Kansans for Fair Courts. They have been attempting to help out in the judicial retention election. And as you look at the early returns, Ryan, what are you seeing with regard to judicial retention across the state of Kansas?
Yeah, thanks for having me. We maintain that we're cautiously optimistic. This has been a campaign full of a lot of really lies and distortions and really unprecedented. We haven't seen this before in judicial retention races. And so we really believe that Kansans, at the end of the day, saw through those efforts to oust these justices and saw through the lies in the smear campaign and will ultimately return them to office for the people of Kansas. It's been in the 60 years that we've had the merit system. We've not had a justice not retained, so hopefully we can continue that streak.
Okay, so with regard to judicial retention, so far, looking like at this point everybody at least is looking to be retained at the moment. Every retention candidate, based on the few precincts that are reporting, at least at 59% retention. And so, like you said, cautiously optimistic from your side. But what is it about this particular issue that galvanized folks, your group of Kansans for Fair Courts, to say, hey, we need to spend a little time and money assisting these justices and judges in getting out their message?
Yeah, well, really, since 2013, Governor Brown, back in the State of the State speech, really attacked the way we select these justices based on he wanted to move to a more political system. And since that time, there have been over 55 different bills introduced or worked on that seek to penalize the courts in some form or fashion, including one that ultimately was signed into law that ended up defunding the entire judicial branch, which is something that we haven't seen happen before in the history of our country, where two political branches have defunded a third. It's really kind of unconscionable. And so we saw this as a raw power grab. There's been a lot of talk through this campaign cycle about the Carr brother murders, some horrific murders that occurred in Wichita. And the truth is that this court upheld 57 different counts against these two murderers, and they are on death row and will be there until they die in the El Dorado Correctional Facility. And so it was getting past that, because really what this is about is these tax cuts that the governor pushed through that have bankrupted our state, and how that interacts with the education funding case. Education funding is the largest single expenditure, and so he's hoping to replace these justices so that he gets a decision that will help him make the math work. And there's some other single-issue groups that are involved that also are hoping to, that have been funded by the governor this time, that are hoping to get those justices changed so that they can advance their special interest agenda, instead of focusing on the rule of law and the Constitution as it's written.
Again, we've been talking to Ryan Wright with Kansans for Fair Courts. And do you believe that if you get the justices retained, that this is going to be the end of it, or will it depend upon the makeup of the legislature going forward and any changes that might happen on that end?
I think what we've seen in the primary, right away, we've seen moderating of the Republican primary. So I definitely think that we're going to see a slowing of the attacks against the justices. That's my hope anyway, because it's really important. A lot of people don't understand. They're actually prevented from commenting on cases that are before them or may come before them. So it's not really a fair fight. We're asking them, we're trying to hold them accountable, and we talk about this in a political scenario, but they don't have the same tools by which to respond. So hopefully Kansans will send a clear message tonight that they want their courts to be fair and impartial and not politicized.
Again, we've been talking to Ryan Wright with Kansans for Fair Courts. Thank you so much for your time, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're listening to WIBW News and election night coverage here on WIBW 580 AM and 104.9 FM, and also online at WIBW News on Facebook. As we're doing Facebook Live, you can find your election results at WIBWNewsNow.com/elections, as well as we will rejoin CBS here in just about 50 seconds as we get ready for another update on this presidential election, where we have so many states still in play, although across the middle of the country, across the Great Plains, it looks like it's a fairly red center of the country, as is the surprise to very few. And then, of course, the eastern portion of the country, more blue. But some of those toss-up states are still that, and that's what's been interesting about this evening thus far. And as we continue forward, we'll have more information from the Secretary of State's office as we get new returns in across the state of Kansas. And we will also, of course, pass along to you guests from both the Republican and Democratic watch parties here in Topeka. You're listening to WIBW Topeka as we join CBS News.
CBS News Special Report, Election 2016.
CBS News estimates the presidential candidates so far have won the states where they were favored, but the battlegrounds are still up for grabs. Clinton campaign spokesman Brian Fallon remains optimistic.
If you look at Nevada, you're seeing record turnout in the early vote in Clark County, which is a huge Democratic stronghold area, and even in a state like North Carolina, which we think is going to be tight and probably going to be late to be called.
A.J. Delgado is a senior advisor to the Trump campaign.
In these battleground states, especially, for instance, Michigan, I just saw a poll last night that showed we were actually up in Michigan. It's really anyone's game at this point.
In battleground Florida, CBS News estimates Republican Senator Marco Rubio has been reelected.
America's going to be okay. We will turn this country around. I have faith. I know God is not done with America yet.
We estimate Democrat Tammy Duckworth beats incumbent Republican Senator Mark Kirk in Illinois. CBS News Special Report. I'm Bill Whitney.
WIBW Topeka FM News 104.9.
Ready for this?
1, 2, 3, up.
At Madonna Rehabilitation Hospitals, success in rehabilitation is measured in breakthroughs. Taking a step after a brain injury, feeling reassurance after a spinal trauma, saying a word after a stroke. We bring hope and healing to adults and children through clinical expertise, cutting-edge research, and innovative technology. After traumatic illness and injury, when some might say, I can't, at Madonna we work hard to say, now you can. Learn more at Madonna.org.
Jeff Vogel and the CFG team are celebrating 20 years of building wealth that lasts, and they want you to join their celebration with a free holiday concert. Andrew Peterson and the Behold the Lamb of God tour will be at White Concert Hall in Washburn University December 3rd.
Be kind to yourself.
The concert is free, but you still must have a ticket to get in. Get yours fast, as there's only a limited amount of seats. You can get your tickets online at cfgks.com or any Alpha Media Topeka website.
Another successful advertiser, serious about growing business with help from Team W Advertising.
I'm Darryl Holliday with MK Minerals. What Team W did is they listened and understood the product. That's what impressed me the most. But the reality is it increased our sales 15 to 20%. And for the first time in our business life, we ran out of product. We're not very proud of that from a production standpoint, but Team W had a big impact. And I will say that I'm a listener, and you can listen to the radio and easily tell which companies are working with Team W. I don't think it's very difficult. Unfortunately, you can also tell the ones that are not. In the past, we spent the money, but I would tell you honestly, I never felt very good about it. This I feel good about. And working with Team W gave us that confidence that it is the right way to deliver a message about what we consider to be a very important product.
If you're serious about growing your business, Team W can help with advertising strategies and creative services at no cost to you. Find out how. Visit our website, goteamw.com.
WIBW Topeka FM News 104.9.
You're listening to Election Night 2016 on WIBW News, WIBWNewsNow.com, 580 at WIBW, and FM News 104.9. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at WIBW News. And Nick Gosnell with you, along with Michael Newman from The Michael Newman Show, and former Democratic Party Chair Joan Wagnon, who, of course, is still well involved with what goes on in the grassroots as well with the Democratic Party across Kansas. So it's been an interesting night. I'm not going to say that we're halfway home or even close to that, but an hour and a half in, we're starting to see some early returns come in. And what the narrative going into tonight across the state of Kansas, Joan, has been that this is a referendum on the previous 6 years of the Brownback administration. From what you're seeing in early returns, would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely, and I think the returns are bearing that out. I've been following a couple of Senate races, and it looks like we're going to pick up some additional Democratic seats from very conservative Brownback supporters in the Senate. And if you couple that with the gains that were made in the primary by moderate Republicans, then I think it gives you a working group that could perhaps address some of the problems that people see with what's been going on.
Well, it was interesting, at least in particular, with the Kansas Senate this last session. I remember having to go directly from the chamber to work for the morning program because they didn't finish until 3 a.m., 3:15 a.m., something on that order in terms of a budget to dive across the line with 21 votes in the Kansas Senate. And that I asked Senate President Susan Wagle, half in jest and half seriously, earlier on prior to the election, are you going to make us stay that late again? And she said, well, I promise I'll get you a cup of coffee. I don't know what that means in terms of governing when things actually are tightening up, for want of a better term, on the Senate side. Will that end up as a practical matter making things easier or more difficult in terms of actually getting good policy made? Any opinion on that at this point?
Well, I think you saw Susan Wagle and her announcement that she had about we've been listening to the public and we're going to make some changes next year. I think everybody's been listening. And so what we don't know is what kind of policy they're going to make. But I think you're going to definitely see some things, and you have possibilities of coalitions. And people are just not happy with the direction of the state.
Well, the state always wants more free money from people.
Oh, come on,
That's
Michael.
exactly what's happening. I'm not against. I am not for public education, period. It's bad for children, and it's immoral. And what's going on in this state is you've got this constitutional amendment that's forcing people to pay into a system that teaches their kids to be racist, and they can't do anything about it. And as soon as somebody says, you know what, let's back this off just a little bit, let's look at what our schools are doing and the fact that they're wasting a lot of money and could do the same job with less. As soon as that happens, then you get the Supreme Court to walk in and say, hold on, we saw this report. And this report says everyone in the state of Kansas will be educated if we just give them more money. Just like every other education report has said since the beginning of time, and it has never, never, never worked.
And do you just make that up?
What? Well, it's true.
No.
Why is it not true?
Well, I don't know that anything you said was true, but I'm interested to know what constitutional amendment teaches our children to be racists.
No, it's the schools that teach our kids to be racist.
And how did they do that?
Even the schools in Lawrence and the schools here in Topeka, the school districts, you know what the Pacific Education Group is?
No, I don't.
Pacific Education Group is a group out of San Francisco that teaches white privilege training. And we spent $135,000
in Lawrence?
In Topeka, in those school districts, to teach our teachers and administrators how to teach white privilege to our students.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and go to the telephone here, as we were. I believe we have actually had had the phone drop. So we'll go ahead and talk to Keith Montgomery at Democratic headquarters, as he has Democratic candidate Virgil Weigel for the Kansas House with him. And good evening. Good evening, everyone, and good evening to you, Keith.
Thank you so much, Nick. I want to tell Mr. Weigel here, who's a candidate in the 56th House District, that he'll be speaking with Michael Newman, who is one of our talk show hosts, and Nick Gosnell back at the studio. It's a little early here, but one of the things that I wanted to get your perspective on, Mr. Weigel, is there seems to be an awful lot of excitement in this room. Don't you agree? Okay, let me make sure that I've got your microphone on here, sir. There we go. And that's now it should be there.
Okay.
So whenever I hear a new race, maybe some new results coming in on a new race, I hear a lot of excitement in the room. And I have been at this Democratic Watch Party 2 or 3 times before, and it seems to be more exciting this year than it has in past. Am I right?
I definitely believe you're right on that. It's just electric because of the national implications as well as the state and all of the things that are all enmeshed together. Yeah, I think that there's definitely an air of excitement on what's going to happen tonight.
Okay, Nick and Michael, Congressman Weigel can hear you, and he can respond to your questions if you'd like to.
Okay, well, again, former representative and current candidate Virgil Weigel with us, as he's running for the Kansas House against Lane Hemsley, and his district includes part of South Topeka. And when you've been in campaigning for this particular seat, as someone who has served before but also wants to serve again, what's going through your mind when you go knock on doors and talk to people in your potential district?
The first thing when I knock on the door, I introduce myself to him and tell him I'm running for 56th District, and tell him a little bit about myself. And then I ask them a question. I ask them what their feelings is, what their opinion is on how the state's being run right now. How do they think the state's faring as far as economic and tax policy and moving the state forward.
Okay, so with all the votes counted, where are you at right now in terms of what your feelings are, and what you're thinking about how your effort that you were able to put into the race?
Well, for me, it's a group effort. I had a lot of people, volunteers, and just people that wanted to sign up, make phone calls, go out, knock on doors, distribute walk cards, and it's a group effort. And I appreciate that, and I think that's what's going to carry us through.
If I could jump in here, Nick, Mr. Weigel, this has been a rather tumultuous political season because of a lot of the national races. Do you feel that same kind of energy in the local races, or do you think that Kansans have a little bit more normalcy when it comes to that kind of approach? How do you feel about that?
There's an electricity. I don't think it translates into Kansas the way it is at the national level. I think Kansans are steady. They want to make sure that their state is running correctly, and that our children are educated, and that our infrastructure is world class.
Right.
And those are the things that I hear every day when I'm out knocking on doors.
Well, sir, we want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us for a couple of minutes. Good luck in your race tonight. If I could just ask one more question. You were sitting right up front and watching some of the national results.
Yes.
What are the conversations that you hear going on up there?
Oh, I hear all kinds of conversations. It runs the gamut back and forth. And I guess the way to be described is what my wife used to say is sitting on pins and needles, waiting for the next thing to happen.
I can tell you, Nick and Michael, that Mr. Weigel has a big, broad smile on his face when he's talking about this, and I'm just wondering what some of those conversations are up there. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on WIBW.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, guys, thank you. Back to you.
You bet. Keith Montgomery with us, and also Virgil Weigel, former representative, running against Lane Hemsley in the 56th district. Again, that includes much of South Topeka, including my house. I'm not going to say which way I voted, but I do happen to reside in that district, and so I've seen the mailers from both sides and the information as we go across for that particular race. One of the more competitive races in Topeka. Patrick Miller from the University of Kansas talked to us on the News Now at noon program earlier on today, and he pointed out that particular race as being one that could be really close in terms of going on late into the night. Also, the Senate race for that same portion of Topeka and the on through the community with Candace Ayers and Vicki Schmidt could also be close as the night goes along. But really, what's been interesting thus far is how close some of the races have been up towards the top of the ballots. Let's see if we can get the latest information from the Kansas Secretary of State's office, and we'll just get a quick update for folks as we go across 8:45 here on WIBW News, as Donald Trump still leading in the state of Kansas with just a handful of precincts in, about 242 out of 3,500 precincts in. Trump with 53% of the vote in Kansas, as compared to 40% for Hillary Rodham Clinton, 4% for Gary Johnson, 2% for Jill Stein. United States Senate race, incumbent Jerry Moran with 59% of the vote to 36% for Patrick Wisner and 5% for Robert Gerard. In the 1st District United States House race, Roger Marshall, again, who defeated incumbent Tim Hewell's camp in the primary, has 64% of the vote in the House of Representatives. 1st District race compared to 28% for independent Alan LaPolice and 8% for Kerry Burt. The 2nd District race in the United States House of Representatives, including Lynn Jenkins, the incumbent who we spoke to earlier on this evening. Lynn now with a little bit more of a lead over Brittany Potter, 48% to 44%, just about a 2,500 vote lead based on the 57 precincts that have reported. And James Houston Bales, a libertarian, with just over 4,000 votes there and about 8% of the vote in the 2nd District. Still no results yet from the 3rd District House of Representatives race, which could be interesting between Republican Kevin Yoder and Democrat Jay Seide, as that includes much of Kansas City, not only Wyandotte and Johnson counties, but also much of northeast Kansas up toward the Kansas City area as well. The 4th District race, which includes the city of Wichita native Mike Pompeo with 57% of that vote compared to 35% for Daniel B. Giroux and Miranda Allen with 6%, Gordon J. Bakken with 2%. And then as we get down into the Kansas Senate races, Dennis Pyle winning over Jerry Henry in the 1st District Senate race thus far, 62% to 38%. 2nd District Kansas Senate incumbent Marcy Francisco with 70% to just 30% for Republican Meredith Ritchie. In the 3rd Kansas Senate District race, incumbent Tom Holland on the Democratic side winning over Echo Van Meteren thus far, 58% to 42%. The 5th District Kansas Senate race, close to this point, Republican Steve Fitzgerald with 53% of the vote compared to 47% for Democrat Bill Hutton. Have not heard anything from the 6th, 7th, or up to the 11th District in the Kansas Senate races. Don't have any information from those races as yet. In the 12th District Kansas Senate race, Karen Tyson with 78% of the vote. 13th District in the Kansas Senate, Jake LaTurner, the Republican from Independence, who it looked like was going to be in a bit of a tough race, thus far is doing well, but with just one precinct reporting. So basically, we're talking about advance voting in that 13th Kansas Senate District. More than likely has the early lead, 59% to 41%. But again, we're still very early in terms of some of these parts of the state. Joan and Michael, they've still got a lot of votes still to be counted across the state of Kansas.
Oh yeah, we got a long way to go here, and we got a long way to go with the rest of the country. What have we gotten ourselves into?
This is the coverage that will take forever to end. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll both still be doing election coverage tomorrow morning when our shows would normally be
well,
on.
Here's the thing. I mean, we're actually, if you look at the whole country, we're starting to get some pretty solid numbers. A lot of the eastern side of the country that, just 45 minutes ago was only reporting 1%. It's now reporting in the anywhere between 50 and 90 percentile range. So we're going to have some answers on those questions in short order. There's still a couple of states like Iowa that their polls don't close till, 9 o'clock?
That's right, 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm.
So hopefully within the next half an hour or so, we'll have a good idea of where that's going. But, yeah, I mean, look, half the country is either reported, or beginning to report. So we're well on the way. And what is it, only 9 o'clock? We've only been doing this for a couple of hours now, and we planned on being here for a while. That's why we have a truckload of food sitting out there.
We do, and in fact, we want to get to eating some of that. So we will join our folks at CBS here at 10 minutes before the hour. But we did want to let you know that you're listening to WIBW News. You can also listen live on Facebook at WIBW News, and here on WIBW 580 AM in Topeka, also FM News 104.9. You can also listen online at WIBWNewsNow.com and find your latest election returns at WIBWNewsNow.com/elections. You can also find the statewide returns at sos.ks.gov. I'm Nick Gosnell. We will join national coverage from CBS at 8:50.
CBS News Special Report, Election 2016.
It's a close race for the presidency, too close to call right now. CBS News does project Republicans will keep control of the House of Representatives and that Hillary Clinton will win Connecticut. Donald Trump will win Louisiana. Florida, a record voter turnout, and nearly all the votes are counted, but the outcome's still a toss-up. Live to CBS's Peter King in Orlando.
And, Jim, Donald Trump needs Florida to get to the White House. With 95% of the vote counted, it's still a toss-up. And if you're wondering about recounts, it would take a margin of 0.5% to trigger one automatically. The margin is slim, but not that low right now. And the more than 6.5 million people voted early here in Florida. That's helped the state get that record turnout.
Other battleground states still considered toss-ups: Ohio, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. CBS's Anthony Mason in Pennsylvania looking at the exit polling there.
Hillary Clinton winning basically 3 out of 4 voters in the city. Donald Trump winning nearly that margin in the rural areas. But the real battle is there in the suburbs where it's dead even.
This campaign already going down in history as one of the most contentious ever. On BuzzFeed, President Obama, with a word of wisdom, chill.
Remember, no matter what happens, the sun will rise in the morning, and America will still be the greatest nation on earth.
The investors are nervous about the tight race. Tokyo stocks are down more than 2%. Dow Jones futures plunging 400 points. CBS News Special Report. I'm Jim Taylor.
The outstanding team at St. Francis Health Cancer Center believes that knowledge is power and can bring peace of mind, which is why they're hosting a free cancer prevention and education dinner on November 9th. Join their team of doctors and advanced practice providers for a meaningful night of information about cancer, designed to educate and empower our community about risk factors, the importance of screening, and life after diagnosis. Because the more you know, the more you can be proactive about your health. Registration is required. Sign up today by calling 785-295-8900. That's 785-295-8900.
Jackson County Land Auction, Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock. Whiting, Kansas, by Farmers National Company. Fred Olson, agent. 890 acres selling and 4 tracts. Located on K9 Highway at Whiting. Cropland, pasture, improvements. Immaculate 3-bedroom ranch-style home. Top producing farmland with quality soils. Opportunity to buy a full second of land. Golf course quality pastures with 3 large ponds. Jackson County Land Auction, November 9. Whiting, FarmersNational.com. Fred Olson, 620-285-9131.
Horizon Farm and Ranch Realty is selling 177 acres Morris County land offered in 3 tracts. Thursday, November 10th, 7 p.m., Fairgrounds, Council Grove, Kansas. Land is on Highway 56, 2 miles west of Wilsey, Kansas. Tract 1, 132 acres tillable. Tract 2, 45 acres pasture. Tract 3, combination of both tracts. Morris County Land Auction, November 10th, Council Grove. Don Heller Hares, seller. HorizonFarmRanch.com. Sheila Van Winkle, agent. 785-280-3564. Office 888-825-1199. Alpha Media would like to welcome and congratulate these new members on their decision to join the Greater Topeka Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Kathy Buckley with Patio Pool and Fireside. We've been serving Topeka for 45 years. We bring the comforts of indoors, outdoors. Contact us at 357-5194.
Hi, I'm David Porterfield at Porterfield's Flowers. You can find beautiful things live at Huntoon and Oakley or on the web at porterfieldsflowers.com.
For more information on becoming a member, visit topekachamber.org.
WIBW Topeka FM News 104.9.
You're listening to Election Night 2016 on 580 WIBW and FM News 104.9. I'm Nick Gosnell. Michael Newman across the desk, and a former Democratic state chair here in Kansas, Joan Wagnon, also joining us here on WIBW News. Our thanks as well to all of you for listening, whether you're listening on 580, on FM 104.9, online at WIBWNewsNow.com, or on our Facebook live feed, and that is at facebook.com/WIBW News. You can also see returns there as well. But really, even though we're almost 2 hours into this coverage, Joan made a good point, but I'm not going to make her make it again. She's got pizza in her mouth, but I will ask Michael to do the same thing, which is, across the country and here in Kansas, it is all over but the counting, and yet that's what we're waiting for.
Right. Well, and the thing about it, in any election, it's a lot of money has been spent. A lot of people are have something riding on the election, and they want results as soon as possible. So you've got a scenario where stuff comes out, and it's, you're making conclusions based on very, very little evidence. Okay, well, 4% is reported in, and we're at 50% now. It's very, very close. And you don't know exactly what's going to happen until later on. You just have to be patient just a little bit, because it's going to take a while. I mean, there's a lot of votes to count, a lot of things to tabulate, and a lot of things to look at. And generally what happens is you know when you know, right? So later on, people are looking, they're counting, they're bringing the stuff in, and, once it's sitting there in front of you and they really start going through it, then you can get a better look at what's going on. I'm thinking, what's 9 o'clock? It's going to be probably, give it another hour, maybe hour and a half, but give it another hour, and I'll think we'll have something in the realm of some solid answers.
We'll at least know where the problems are going to lie. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. With as many states, at least in terms of the national race, is too close to call.
Right.
Will we know whether it's Ohio or Pennsylvania or Utah or whatever where all the lawyers will have to land their planes? I don't know. But
some of the closer races, the Florida race, it looks very much like it's going to be Trump. It's almost completely voted out there, and according to the New York Times, it's 95% forecast that it'll go for Trump. And with about a little over half of everything reported in Ohio, according to the New York Times. So, I mean, it's the New York Times, right?
Well,
they're still saying,
but at some point you have to trust the boots on the ground, regardless of the. And
here's the thing: when the New York Times says 95% for Trump, it's probably, with this much reported, it's probably, unless something, unless half the state gets nuked, and Russia really did want to affect the election.
Oh, brother!
Then it's I think Ohio and Florida are going to go for Trump. But the rest of the country is very interesting. Missouri, it's leaning Trump now. We don't know anything about Iowa. Iowa is one of the big swing states. That's 6 electoral votes, and they're lazy. Everyone in Iowa is lazy. So
thanks. As a native Iowan, I really do appreciate your comments.
And you represent those people. So their polls aren't going to actually close for another 3 minutes or so.
They don't close until 9 o'clock. And earlier on in the evening, what I should have said and did not say is that it's 7 o'clock local time, and there are portions of western Kansas that are in mountain time, so they didn't close until 7 o'clock that time, and so I think I may have misspoke earlier on in the evening, but that said, we are closed in Kansas now and looking at results coming in as the evening goes along, although again, we're still dealing with even just a handful of precincts in most of the races, 10, 12 precincts out of 145 in some of these Kansas Senate races, just 1 or 2 precincts in some of the others. So still a lot of information to get back to the Kansas Secretary of State's office and get counted from there.
Well, if you look at the reporting map here, only Thomas, Trego, Meade, Clark, and Riley County have completely reported. According to this, there's results reporting is continuing from another, I'd say, 20, and then the rest of the counties, it's like, we haven't heard from them. Yeah, they need to pick up the phone. So like I said, we won't know for give it another hour. And I think a lot of this stuff, once the flow of numbers starts going, then it sort of picks up steam until it's over. So
exactly. And here in Shawnee County, we'll try to quickly go over what we know thus far in the minute that we have between now and CBS News, with nearly 86% of the precincts reporting here in Shawnee County. Things fairly evenly divided between Trump and Pence and Clinton and Kane. However, Trump leading in the statewide race, and Jerry Moran also leading here in Shawnee County in his race. But as we get down toward the 18th District State Senate race, Laura Kelly with the lead right now, 57 to 42%. The 19th District State Senate race, Anthony Hensley leading 62 to 38 over Zach Haney thus far, and Vicki Schmidt leading 64 to 35 over Kansas Ayers in that 20th District State Senate race. Ronald B. Ellis, Republican, leading Michael D. Cadell 62 to 37 in the 47th District House race here in Shawnee County as well. You're listening to WIBW Topeka, 580 AM and FM 104.9. News from CBS coming up at 9 o'clock. 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 Coming up at 9 o'clock.